get back, as it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror Movie Night.
Mostly.
I'm Steve.
I'm Sean.
Hi, Sean. How's it going?
It's going.
We're recording this way earlier than we normally do, which feels weird. Well, I guess we recorded David first episode a little bit earlier in the day because of the time difference. But yeah, it just feels weird to be recording at 1 o'clock instead of like 6.
It's kind of nice for me because I'm just the type of person to, if I have something to do in the evening, I don't do anything before it. I like to be lazy before I have to be productive. And so now I did this, and now I have the rest of my day to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, I was going to say it lets you do stuff after. Because today, I think like we're going to go to IKEA and like that sort of stuff. Like can actually, and maybe see a movie. It'll be nice.
Right.
So we do have a movie to talk about before we get into this week's interview. But before that, we do have another horror story that I want to read. It was sent to us. It's a pretty long email. So it's sent to us in 2 parts. One's a horror story about a horror movie, more or less. And then the other one, the other half is like a paranormal experience. So we'll save the paranormal experience for another time. But I definitely wanted to read this. So it's from Sarah. And it says, "Hi guys, my name is Sarah and I'm writing in from Tennessee. I love the podcast and your guys' sense of humor. I've been following on Instagram and YouTube. I love watching you guys talk and joke around and all the excited reactions." Which, that's us, is excited reactions.
100%.
She says, "I guess I'll start with a little story of what really got me into horror, and then I'll leave you with an account of one of my many personal paranormal experiences, which we'll talk about probably in another episode." So for horror, I've always liked things that were a bit spooky, and Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. When I was about 11 or 12, I think, the Blair Witch Project was just hitting theaters, and I remember my dad making a big stink about how we weren't allowed to see the movie with him, which sucked especially for me because I've always been super into witches. Well, he ended up buying the book from our local Hastings, which I'm guessing there was like a book about it or like a novelization or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I guess
I looked up Hastings, and Hastings is this big like entertainment, like kind of like an FYE sort of place.
It sounds familiar. I think I've heard people talk about it before, but we don't have them here.
I'd love to go to it. Yeah. Since we only had a small collection of books and the only bookshelf in the house was in my room, that's where the book found its home. I remember thinking one night, maybe I can't watch the movie, but he never said I can't read the book. So of course, I grabbed the book and got comfy and started flipping through the pages. I came across an image in the book that freaked me out so much I had to stop for the night. I put the book back on the shelf and went to bed. The next morning when I woke up, the book was laying in front of the bookshelf, open to the page with the image that freaked me out. I tried to think logically about it and thought maybe I didn't put it all the way on the shelf and this is just a coincidence. So I placed it securely on the shelf, right in the middle, stuffed between other books, just to be sure, and I went about my day. The next morning, I woke up to the same scene. So of course, I told my dad about it, freaking out. He said, "Don't worry, we'll just keep it in my room from now on." Cool. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Nope. The next day, I woke up and saw my dad in the backyard lighting a fire in a trash can, and I watched him throw the book in the fire. When he came inside, I asked him why, and he said that because the book is possessed and we're not keeping it. He said when he woke up, the book was on the floor in front of the bed on the same page it kept going to for me. To this day, I still haven't watched the movie. But from that point on, I got really into researching the history of hauntings and haunted things, which led me to being obsessed with watching horror movies based on true stories. Something about historical hauntings and paranormal phenomenon just speaks to me.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested what page it was. So I guess
what
Sarah,
the fuck?
Yeah, Sarah, if you're listening to this, if you can find the book, send us a picture of the page. I would like to see, because that's
they're probably like, I'm not touching that book again.
Yeah.
You can eat a dick, guys.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm incredibly curious. That's wild.
Blair Witch is one of those movies where like it was such a cult phenomenon when it came out, which was before I was seeing movies. Yeah. And I watched it and I was like, okay, it didn't like super affect me, but then saw it in theaters. I was like, yeah, this definitely is creepy. Like you have to watch it in a dark and closed space. And truly the final shot of Blair Witch is one of those images that kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
Which did I choose that as one of my shots for our top 5 like images from horror? I don't remember.
Maybe.
But It was that one sticks with me for sure. The Mark or Mike just standing in the corner.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's interesting because I make no claim to be a historian by any means, but to my understanding, I'm pretty sure that Blair Witch was like the first at all, if at least the first big American found footage film. I think Japan was doing it before for a little bit, but in terms of America, it was the first found footage film. And I think it was also one of the first times where we were like, hey, this is real, you know?
Yes.
I mean, we had like with Cannibal Holocaust, you know, people thought it was real, but it didn't have like a whole marketing strategy of marketing it to be real.
Yeah.
So it was it's one of those things where like I didn't see it when it came out. I was also like a kid, you know, because it came out in like 95 or 6.
I think it was late 90s.
Okay.
I'm gonna double.
Even then, it was before I was watching horror movies, you know, like I'm born in 93. So
it was 99. Yeah.
99. So I was like 6, right? Math. That's math. But I'm like impressed with myself for even being able to just guess that right. Dude, boom, boom, boom. But yeah, so I didn't see it. I saw it as an adult after I'd already watched a lot of horror films. So it was one of those things where like I'm already desensitized. Yeah. And if you're really desensitized, it's not as intense as you make it out to be, but the experience, especially with the time.
Yeah, that movie is definitely, it's all about the atmosphere. Like it's not there's not even really any crazy jump scares, like, but the tension and especially in the final scene, you can cut with a knife like that. It's definitely really good. And not even, you know, it being an early found footage film, but that movie was made for $60,000.
Yeah, like, holy shit.
It grossed like a $250,000, or no, it grossed $248 million. Sorry. Jeez. Yeah. So for it being a small budget, like it's amazing. And it's the reason people still talk about it.
Yeah, right. And I think that to me, the most impressive part is that whole like marketing strategy. Like I'm pretty sure they told the actors, like, you have to go off grid for like 6 months or some shit like that. Like you can't like sign up for shit, no interviews, don't like talk about it, like disappear. We want people to not know who you are and think you're dead.
Well, I mean, still, this is related on the Paranormal Activity front, like the first film, and I'm sure the other films, like when you look up the actors, like I think her name's like Katie Featherstone or something like that. Like it just says her name, like, and you're like, I don't know who this person is, and it's just a great marketing scheme. I agree. Yeah, it's crazy. So we want to talk about something that we talked about in the previous episode, and we want to talk about Kong versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus Kong. So if you haven't seen it, please skip ahead. I don't have a timestamp to give you, but just skip, because we're definitely going to go into spoilers. Yeah. If you have seen Kong versus Godzilla, stick around so we can talk about it. But I just want to give everyone a heads up. We are going to spoil some stuff because we got to talk about it.
And literally don't, like, if you plan on seeing it, please skip. Like, don't just decide whether or not you want to. I'm begging you to skip because I don't want you to hear what we're going to say.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So it's fair to say that your assessment in the last episode was correct.
Yeah. Well, so
what was going to happen?
Yeah. But here's the thing. I've never been so right and so like completely off at the same time. Like, all right. Cause what did I say? This is exactly what I said. I said, they're going to fight. Godzilla is going to smack Kong around at first. And then Kong is going to get a second win. So I was imagining one fight, but it was more like rounds. Like Godzilla beat the fuck out of Kong
underwater.
On the ship, which in my head, that kind of pissed me off because Kong's obviously at a disadvantage in that situation. But at the same time, Kong comes back, but he's got a weapon now, which is literally like, I don't know if you noticed, but that spike, that axe thing was one of Godzilla's spines, like clearly from his species. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So he has to come back with a weapon, and he lays the smackdown on Godzilla. And so what did I say? I said, Godzilla's going to beat the schnout out of Kong.
Yeah.
And then Kong's going to get a second wind.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to fight something together.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened, but a little split up in rounds. But I never in a million years would I have guessed that the thing that they team up against would be Mechagodzilla. Like I would like never in my life would I have thought that that's what they were going to do.
Yeah.
I figured depending on how long this franchise ran, or, you know, like this take on it ran, that they might eventually get to some mech stuff, but I didn't think it was going to be Mechagodzilla. I thought we were going to get more like, I don't remember the name of it, but there's a Gundam-esque character.
Got you. I saw something about Mechagodzilla online
Before?
Not that he was going to be in the movie, but like it was in my head. So when he popped up, I was like, oh shit. I'd like to say that I hated the design of Mechagodzilla.
It
was
felt like
not a kindergartner designed it. Like it was very like
that far.
Like I would love to see like you look at Godzilla. And Godzilla is the design of Godzilla is so badass.
So badass, yeah.
So badass. And then you look at Mechagodzilla, doesn't even have real claws. Like he has like tri claws. And like in terms of like the mechanical aspects, he had like really cool weapons and like that sort of stuff. But like, I just thought his design was so lacking.
That's fair. Nope, sorry, go. You had more.
I was just gonna say, not to be a downer, but like the movie as a whole for me was very miss. I loved all the big fight scenes and stuff. But it's just like every human element in that film is so bad. Like one of the characters, like Millie Bobby Brown's dad at the beginning says, come on, cut your pops some slack. And instantly we all just went, oh.
So
like, I mean, I don't know.
Okay. So first, Mecha.
Yeah.
I agree that it was a little whatever. Yeah. But by that point, as soon as I saw his spine, because you see him as like a ball first, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I just started laughing because I was like, no fucking way. And that I knew like at this point, we're just having fun. Like there's no, like, we're just having fun. The tone of this movie is so drastically different than the original not the original, but the first Godzilla movie of this series. Yeah.
It's more like Kong. It's more like the Kong film.
But even then, it's even sillier than Kong. Like I would say, it almost goes like we're having Pacific Rim fun, but Pacific Rim just did that from the beginning, where this was like tones were contradicting themselves. So that's one thing that I'll say about this that I didn't love. So the first, hands down, by far, Godzilla of this series, again, Godzilla with Bryan fucking Cranston is easily my favorite of the series. Like immediately, significantly. I know you didn't love it, right?
Yeah. I like King of All Monsters or King of Monsters the most, I think.
And that's so funny because that's like a weird in between space between this movie and Godzilla. Because
that one gives me more monsters all the time.
Well, yeah.
And that one's just all monsters.
Yes. And for that aspect, I loved it. I'm just so salty about how they did King Ghidorah, which I think I've commented on before.
Yeah.
But so I agree. I agree about Mecha. I also agree that it kind of just felt like, well, we got our two main guys here, so we need to have a human team that represents Kong, and we have to have a human team that represents Godzilla and whatever. Yeah. I still think it was fun. Like I had fun. I definitely
it was
didn't
a fun movie.
Dislike it.
I'd like to say that I saw it. So I saw it in theaters on its release day.
Yeah.
I had a family behind us, and a child talked the entire film.
I would have punched that kid in the face.
Every subtitle they read out loud. It was very unfortunate. I was still able to enjoy the movie, but I would still love to go see it again in like IMAX.
Yeah.
To get like a big experience.
Yeah.
It's not like it was like a very serious film where it was like pulling me out of it, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I was annoyed, but it also didn't like super affect me. The other thing that I did want to say is they had King Ghidorah's like skull or something neurotransmitting to control Mechagodzilla. I don't understand. I don't
So,
know if I understood
no.
Because like
They
it was originally the dude, right? The dude had a helmet on and he was controlling
Yeah.
Mechagodzilla, but then
Yeah.
he died or he gets shocked or zapped
Yeah.
dies. How does the mecha work after that?
So I'm pretty sure, and I don't know 100%, but I think what was happening was they were using King Ghidorah's skull more like a power source, but they
Yeah.
were acknowledging that like there was a level of consciousness in there. But I don't think they were, I think they were like running tests on it and seeing what they could do with it more than anything, but they were using it as a power source.
Okay.
They were trying to give the guy control. And then in that process, technically, I think Mechagodzilla was being powered by one of Ghidorah's heads. I think
that's
so I think that it's just that it over what's the term for that? There was an override. Basically, and it fried homie. It was definitely not like the most diligent scientific writing. Like there was
spill like liquor on the mainframe to make it stop working or something.
There was it was just a fucking it was liquor.
It was liquor.
But like, they definitely were just like, let's just come on. And to a degree, fun. I can respect it, but
it was fun. I think I'd like to know what your favorite part was. My favorite part was when King Kong reset his shoulder by slamming it into the skyscraper,
and he just goes,
he just and his shoulder's fine again. I loved that part.
As soon as I saw it too, I was like, I know that someone just pitched that at a writing table. Like, what if this motherfucker just try? Because I was thinking about it during the whatever. I don't know what my favorite part would be. I can tell you I didn't like both when it came to Kong and Mecha. I didn't like Godzilla just kind of looking like a bitch for parts of it. Like that upset me.
Hey, what did I say, dude? Godzilla knows how to sidestep. There was a time 100% Godzilla went for King Kong and King Kong went whoop and just ducked to the side.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, he listened to Mostly Horror Movie Night.
And that's fair. I did like that because I was I knew that they were going to make Kong big, but I didn't realize how big they made him. Looking at his skull compared to Godzilla's skull, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's years in the future from the original film.
Right. And I get them. I just didn't, I guess I thought they'd make him like the tiniest bit smaller.
Gotcha.
Like not even just like the tiniest bit. But and so I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, this fight's going to be crazy. But I at least like that they did not take any power away from Godzilla's breath.
No,
like that whole scene. I'll say that my favorite part was actually probably when Kong was just Tarzaning through the city, trying to avoid that beam. Like that shit was cool. I was on the edge of my seat, dude.
Yeah, Godzilla's just fucking and it's going through, cutting through buildings,
ripping through shit. Like they did not dumb his shit down at all.
No, and that's why, like, Godzilla had a fucking battle axe, but he needs a battle axe.
You mean Kong?
Or Kong, Kong, Godzilla battle axe. No, Kong had the battle axe. Like, it was great. It was fun. It was a fun movie. What?
How did we not even talk about Hollow Earth? I had no clue. Like I knew that like underground societies of like monsters, but I didn't know that we were going full Hollow Earth. And the Hollow Earth design was strange.
Hollow Earth, it was weird. I was kind of disappointed because I want more monsters. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get more monsters if there's no monsters in Hollow Earth?
Well, no,
like, that's the whole premise. You know what I mean?
They didn't say no monsters in Hollow Earth. We saw a couple monsters down there. And what I think that they're going to do is they were like everything up till now has been them working with like established Godzilla lore and canon and monsters other than the creatures in the first one that he fought, because those we made up. But I think that now that we're in Hollow Earth, we're going to get like, this is where they're like, now we get to design whatever we want. And we already brought out like King Ghidorah is the ultimate like established Godzilla villain monster. He's the big badass, you know? He's the one that's from another whatever, another dimension. So now I think that they just want the ability to write new Godzilla monsters. I think that's why they're doing this.
They also just have more monsters they can pull out. You know what I mean? So at least they can be like, well, they came from Hollow Earth.
Yeah.
That's where they're from.
Yep.
So fun movie. Let's talk about who we have on this week. We have an interview and a top 5, a very fun top 5 with Lauren. And Lauren is the host of Let's Get It On Film podcast. Let's Get It On Film is a podcast that when I describe it to people, and I hope Lauren doesn't take offense to this, because it's no offense intended, but it is like My Favorite Murder with sex scenes from movies. Yep. So it's 2 people presenting sex scenes from films. They each talk about what they enjoy about the scene. They go into great detail and very intricate and intelligent detail about the films and the scenes. They talk about it in terms of when the films were made and what that has to do with it. They have a specific rating that they rate the sex scenes by, or love scenes as they call it. And we talk about all that in the interview. And Lauren is also working on a project related to lesbians and vampires and kind of how they correlate in film history. So it's a great conversation. We also have a top 5 of our top 5 sexiest monsters.
One of the most fun that I think we've had with top 5.
I was going to say it's definitely one of our best top 5s.
Yeah.
With some really crazy answers. So definitely listen to that at the end there. Anything else you'd like to say about the interview, Sean?
I think it was great. They were great conversation. Clearly knows their shit. And I don't know. I'm excited to share the interview with everybody. And I think, I won't spoil stuff, but I hope that we have further communication with them in the future and their show.
Agreed. On that note, we'll send you guys over to the interview with Lauren of the Let's Get It On Film podcast. All right, we are here with Lauren from the Let's Get It On Film podcast. How's it going, Lauren? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I've already done a lot today in terms of just my own production stuff. So I'm really looking forward to kicking back, having a little glass of wine, and chatting with you guys.
Nice, exactly. I know. I just ran to the deli to get a Coke. It's not as exciting, but I think that's equal for me. So you have a very unique podcast. The reason that we're even chatting right now, so when Sean and I first started this podcast, we got onto, I think it's called matchmaker.fm. Essentially, we know that we wanted to interview people from the horror genre, people from honestly really anywhere that wanted to talk about horror. And you were someone that reached out and said, hey, I have this really cool thing that I'm working on. I also have a podcast. Let's chat. Instantly had intrigue because your description of your podcast and all that sort of stuff was really cool. Can you talk a little bit before we get into like the horror stuff or anything like that? Talk a little bit about your podcast, how you started it, what it's about, because I think it's really unique.
So Let's Get It On Film. We call it the Pervy Podcast. We are interested in dissecting sex scenes, or we kind of tactfully call them love scenes, but you know what we mean, in TV and film. And it started because my co-host Kate and I went to film school together, and we actually were roommates. And when we lived together, we were constantly watching film and TV and critiquing, and we just both come from a very kind of analytical perspective when it comes to the media we consume. And so we went on to do things in the industry separately, but we've always wanted to do a project. And it just kind of came up near the end of 2020 where we were like, we should just do something. And a podcast seemed like a great idea. And as soon as we had the idea of a podcast, the subject matter came pretty quickly to us. Okay. Because as much as we both love film and television, we also love talking about sex. We are, we call ourselves perverts because we enjoy sex on screen, and we're not shy about talking about like our sex lives with each other. And we really wanted to explore this aspect of filmmaking because, I mean, I don't want to be rude to you guys, but there are a dozen like film podcasts
Of
out
course.
there.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many even
you guys are
horror
very
podcasts.
unique. You guys are very I like your style. But in terms of just a basic TV and film horror, like any sort of TV and film podcast, there's so many out there. And so we
100%.
wanted something that was fresh and that was looking at an aspect of filmmaking that's kind of maligned in the same way that I think horror can be maligned as kind of one note. And we found that when you dig into a sex scene, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter whether it's an Oscar contender or like softcore erotica. There will be aspects of the scene that you can break down and discuss, and you can tell when something has a lot of care put into it in like every line of dialogue, in every shot composition. And that's just really interesting to see in an aspect of filmmaking that doesn't get as much attention, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. So I just spent today. We're going to be releasing this episode a little bit in the future because we have a bunch of guests all at once. But today is March 10th, and you guys just released your episode. I think it was 6, right? It's called Bust a Gut. About
Very flattered by that laugh.
Yeah, no, it's very good. So it's about sex scenes that are funny or comedic in some way, that have that kind of essence to them. And two things that I really value about your podcast is, A, like you were saying, you are both sex positive, and you talk about things very eloquently, and you're not afraid to talk about anything, but you also have a very like positive outlook on a lot of things. You're not, it's not maligned when you talk about it, which is really amazing to hear. And the other thing is you're able to take those smaller things, like you talk about the Amy Schumer movie that
the Amy Schumer one, the Trainwreck.
Trainwreck, yeah. So you guys are talking about Trainwreck, and like in all instances that could have a lot of like, negative things said about it, but you're able to take, her style of comedy and the way that she's approaching the scene as more of a dialogue scene as opposed to a sex scene and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I really enjoy the way that you approach it. Did you take a lot of time? I know you said that the thought of the podcast kind of came to you quickly, but did you take a lot of time in kind of formulating the way that the podcast was going to go, where you each present a film and you break it down and that sort of thing?
It's funny you say that because, yeah, the original concept did come very quickly. Basically, in one night when we were just on the phone talking for hours, like we already, were doing before we started recording it, we came up with about 50 episode ideas, just with scenes examples off the top of our heads.
Nice.
And it quickly became something that we were like, okay, well, how would we organize this, and how would we section this out and kind of segment it so that it would be easy listening. And that did take a little bit of refinement, but not too bad. We pre-recorded some stuff at the end of 2020, and we're just releasing in 2021 now.
Gotcha.
Okay. That makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I have not had the chance yet to fully dive in. I was kind of excited to talk to you first before diving in. I kind of like we did it with another movie or something where, I don't know, I kind of like me and Steve coming at the conversation from two different perspectives. So, but I think that we're kindred spirits in that way, that our podcast sort of developed from me and Steve just talking about movies and you know what I mean? Yeah. And I really like your approach so far. So
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's obvious when I listen to you guys that there's the same sort of energy behind it of you would be having these conversations anyway.
Exactly.
The fact that these are getting recorded and put out into the internet and people are listening to them, wild idea. But that's secondary to the fact that you guys enjoy yourselves and you have a great relationship and you want to make each other, for Kate and I, it's we want to make each other laugh,
Right.
and we're constantly trying to do that. But you guys are like engaging with each other, and that is, really cool, and that will happen regardless of whether you're recording.
Yep, exactly. I couldn't have said that better myself. I think that's the exact like Sean and I lived together a year ago now. I mean, for longer than a year. And like you said, I mean, with our friend group, this is conversations that we would have anyways. And now that we're miles and miles apart, it's basically having the same conversation weekly. So it's definitely exactly what we're doing. So one thing that I wanted to ask you, while you so far have in the 6 episodes that you've released, you've focused on a wide variety of love scenes in film. You haven't done a horror scene yet. So I know that when you and I were talking previously, kind of just talking about what we wanted to talk about this episode when we did this interview, you were talking about sex scenes in horror sometimes leaning a certain way. Like I'm curious on your opinion on sex scenes in horror. You seem extremely well versed, so I just wanted to get your kind of take on, if you see a pattern, if you have certain thoughts about sex scenes in horror.
I think horror films are unique in filmmaking because the stakes are literally life and death. There's high tension, which is a great film. There's high tension everywhere, and it seeps into the entirety of the genre. That said, this is true of all films, that filmmaking, or I suppose media in general, can either be upholding the status quo or challenging it. And in horror, that can often take a sexual bent. You can have, in the ones that uphold, let's say, the status quo, you have the good boys and girls who wait until marriage. And if they do have sex, it's missionary with the lights off. And even then, you're not really meant to enjoy it very much, because otherwise, a madman will bust in with a very phallic weapon and penetrate you to death.
Yes.
So it's very much upholding this idea that in our specifically like Protestant Christian society, that sex is bad or dirty in some way.
Right.
And so sex in these films can be something that's either suffered non-consensually or something that you are punished for enjoying too much. You can have, in a lot of these films, you have the final girl trope, who's so often like the kind of virginal figure who is revered for her chastity and her good sense, for making it out amid all the horrors trying to corrupt her or something. And so those are a very specific kind of horror film, the ones that kind of, and those that can be like the 50s, a monster rises from a radioactive cesspool and stalks 2 teenagers making out in Lover's Lane. Or it can be what we think of more typically as like the slasher film, with all the rules laid out by Scream.
Yep.
But then there are some films that challenge that convention, where there will be some violence in retaliation for any sort of deviance, whether it's sexual or gender-based, or even just the act of puberty, because that's seen as a huge force. Or it can also sometimes be a new relationship triggering sexual thoughts. Anytime there's some deviance from the norm. But in the ones that challenge convention, there can be these victorious moments of the heroes rising up against this societal force. And often that's by embracing the kind of deviance that they have. And those are the ones that really appeal to me more.
Yeah.
That makes sense. When you say that, I think instantly of It Follows. So that's one that I think like very purposefully challenges that norm. I mean, the whole premise of the movie is about that. I mean, I guess there's a couple of sex scenes or love scenes, but there's one major one at the end of the film, which is the most like fully not plot related one between the the main character and the the guy that's wanted to fall in love and sleep with her the whole movie, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that really challenges the norm. I'm trying to think of other ones that I would say are kind of different.
I was just about to say, if you wanted to, I'm very curious what, like, if you could give a couple examples of ones that you really enjoy that you feel,
Ooh,
test it.
There are a few. I think it's been a long time since I did a Scream marathon. So, but I know that they talk about the rule that you can't have sex.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So Randy's talking about the rules at the end of the first one. And he's saying, you can't, if you say, I'll be right back, that's, you're going to die. If you have sex, you're going to die. So that is one of the, and obviously Wes Craven was very forthright with stating those rules. Yeah.
And I think even just lampshading that is one where I think it brings attention to the idea. But one I just last night, because we were going to talk later about monsters, I watched Nightbreed.
Nice.
Nightbreed.
Oh,
very, very good.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. I've been meaning to re-up, but nice.
It was great in this context, especially because, as we'll talk about, I've been doing a lot with the vampire trope. And there's kind of this joyous, triumphant moment at the end of Nightbreed where one of the protagonists bites the neck of his girlfriend to save her. And it's seen as this act of love. And it's jubilant and beautiful. And it's such an interesting way of taking something that's usually seen as like an assault or a seduction and making it something really joyous and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example that
I like that.
That was very fresh for me.
I need to re-up on that. I'm going to write that down.
Great. It holds up.
We just saw a couple of weeks ago, we talked to the director of Willy's Wonderland, which I don't know if you're familiar with.
I loved that episode.
Oh.
I listened to that.
Oh, that episode.
I gotta say, I loved that episode because Kevin Lewis was his name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He gave such incredible advice for starting out as a filmmaker. It was very inspirational. He was talking about not giving up and not getting beaten down. And that really related to me right now because I'm in a process where I'm pitching some stuff and I'm getting some passes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's great because you have to fail a few times and get, rejected before your big success story.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I was going to say he was very exemplary of that because he really made a lot of films in the early 2000s that, you look on his IMDb and you're like, I don't really know what those are. And then he's come back, 20 years later with a random cult classic basically, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, he has I was just going to say it was such a pleasure talking to him because he's clearly such a passionate guy and he was genuinely excited to talk about it. And like you said, he had great advice for, I would say, not just filmmakers, but any creative, because that's just a reality of the world and industry that we're entering, where you're going to get a lot of rejection and you have to be able to fight through that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that film, with Willy's Wonderland, there is a sex scene that's a very cut and dry slasher sex scene. Basically they are these two teenagers are going to have sex and that they're going to die. You can tell before anything, as soon as the idea hits that they're going to have sex in the film, you can tell that they're going to die, and their sex is basically the avenue that the death is shown through, more or less. There's really no reason for them to have sex at all, regardless of their characters. They paint their characters as those types of people that would just have sex in a abandoned Chuck E. Cheese. But
after, and not just ignorantly, but they knew exactly, they have been freaking out about entering this place, and then as soon as they have a chance, mid everything, they go and do it. So I think that's
always amazing, in especially horror films with the high stakes, and somehow people are still horny.
Yeah.
I don't really get it.
That's the biggest thing, I think, is that everything that I've heard you two talk about on your podcast, and I think most sex scenes in horror movies as well, it's just a radiating horniness no matter what
Yeah.
the like overall kind of like aspect of the film is. You have this like really random horniness that cuts through everything.
Yeah.
I think that's one reason why. Have you ever seen Slumber Party Massacre?
No.
So I just
Ooh.
watched it for the first time this past October. Slumber Party Massacre is a slasher film that came out in the mid 70s, I want to say. And it was written by this woman who was very, at that time, very like pro women's rights, huge feminist, and basically wanted to write a film that was I don't know if she was trying to satirize, but she was basically trying to show like, this is how women are portrayed in horror films, and like, this is why it's negative. It ends up being a film that portrays women like not great at all. There's
Getting
like,
excited.
I know. It's a fun movie, but there's nudity from like the get-go, and it's like a very male gazy sort of movie. But that's the sort of movie that like is trying to show, like trying to break the mold and doesn't really do it. It's kind of a cult classic now, but even the main slasher guy, he has like it's like a drill, like a huge drill bit sort of thing, and it's very like, that's a penis, it's supposed to be a penis, but it's just very, very strange. So obviously horror and sex has its rights and wrongs and pros and cons, as in any film. What are you working on? I know that you talked about it a little bit. So what project are you currently working on that's making you kind of delve into horror-esque stuff?
So, as I said, I have been trying to pitch something right now, which is a documentary. And that is a documentary that follows my kind of passion for cultural critique. But that's not really going anywhere yet. So in the meantime, I was like, I'll just cut a little film collage. Just a little experimental film set to some music, just have some fun with the medium. And I was thinking about the representation of gay people on screen, especially in horror movies. One of my favorite documentaries is The Celluloid Closet. It's so good. It even though it's in the 90s, it tracks gay representation through film. It's excellent, and I really want to follow in that vein of using film to say something about the way that people are portrayed, because in film it really codifies sort of societal thoughts and concepts, and makes it really easy to parse for people. So I found that one of the most prevalent representations of specifically like girl on girl, lesbian women was in the vampire trope. That someone said, aside from pornography, the most common representation of lesbians on screen was as vampires. And so I really got into looking at that, and I ended up watching about 25 films from the 1930s to all the way, I think the last one was 2019, but with a big jump in the 70s when there was this kind of boom of the lesbian vampire. So this film collage, it's just a short film. I've submitted it to a few festivals already, hoping that goes well. But in any case, it was a fun experience, and I enjoyed it very much.
So the one thing you sent it to us, so we've seen it, and that was one thing that really jumped out at me. I mean, it's not super long. It's what, like 6.5, 7 minutes long. But then you have the list of the movies. I'm like, damn, you really cut together a lot of movies. Like the lesbian trope in vampire films is really crazy. Because I didn't realize how prevalent it was. Even, you start off with Jennifer's Body, which is really, it has gotten way bigger. I think it kind of like has had this kind of roller coaster ride of popularity and like relevance, I think, as well. But you start off with that, and you go back as far as Dracula's Daughter, which is what, 36, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
36.
so it's a crazy kind of span of time. Did you notice any difference in the way that it's portrayed from the 30s to now?
Yes. There's actually really interesting rises and falls in the horror genre, and specifically in this trope. In Dracula's Daughter, she's portrayed as wanting to be cured. She comes to a psychiatrist and she says, I want to live in the light, basically, and please fix me and free me of these horrible urges. And then throughout the 50s, it's not coming up as much as some other monster tropes, but there are a few films from the 50s and 60s. 71, people went crazy. People went mad about lesbian vampires. The Hammer films, I don't know if you're aware of them, but they were a British studio that made a lot of these sort of B movies.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a whole series about this lesbian vampire based on the novel Carmilla, which actually predates Dracula, which I think is interesting.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, the lesbian vampire predates Dracula.
And that's what The Vampire Lovers is based off of, right? It's based off of that novel. Okay.
Yeah.
So wait,
yeah.
I'm so sorry. Is that because I watched, prepping for this episode, I watched The Vampire Lovers, which I'm so glad that I watched that, and Dracula's Daughter. I'm sorry, what?
I'm so sorry that you had to watch that, because did you enjoy it at least?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. I enjoyed The Vampire. I watched The Vampire Lovers with one of my roommates, and my girlfriend was kind of in the background watching too, but it had so many moments that were like, that was a very like talking to the TV sort of movie. Like I felt like I was saying things to the characters as they're talking. But no, that was amazing. And honestly has for the 70s, or it came out in what set, like on the dot, like 1970 or 71. Like it had a portrayal of, lesbian love that I feel like is probably crazy for that time. And it also had a really crazy special effect at like the very end where she just zoops and disappears, and I was like, damn, that was cool for them at that point. What were you gonna say about it, Sean?
I just thought it was great. When it started, I kind of had a hard time getting into it, like right at the beginning. But I watched like a lot of old stuff that wasn't necessarily, I didn't know what I was getting myself into entirely, but by the end of it, I was so invested. And I also want to just comment and say that I think it's so funny that like 98% of the men in that movie were ugly as sin, while all of the women were gorgeous, which I feel like is common in a lot lot of 60s and 70s movies.
Gustav the cat was beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to shout out Gustav the cat because he looks like my cat, so I loved him.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I truly, overall, just prepping for this episode in general, you have like piqued this curiosity in a subgenre of horror movie, like exploring different themes that I've seen like a few things of before, but that I haven't actively searched out. But your short, I'm going to go through and watch every single movie on that list. Like that's one of my goals now. So
I don't recommend that. As someone who had to watch all of those, some of them are bad. I mean, there are some really great films in there. Like one from the 60s was Blood and Roses. You can only get it, even though it was filmed, I think, in French, you can only get it in German. And I didn't have subtitles when I watched it, but the entire film is like a painting. Every frame is a beautiful work of art. And there are a few others like The Blood-Splattered Bride, which is this actually kind of complex revenge fantasy, sort of a la Kill Bill, if the protagonist in that, if Uma Thurman did get killed at the end. So... bit of a spoiler there.
Spoilers, dude.
Yeah. Spoilers for The Blood-Splattered Bride.
Yeah.
Or The Hunger, which is a great film, which has David Bowie in it, which is
Oh,
kind of
nice.
fun.
I absolutely have to watch that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you
Um,
just gotta bold some out for us so that way
Yeah.
we can
Oh.
know which ones to hit.
Nope.
And
I'm going through
we're gonna
every
go
single
through all of
one.
them.
Here's the thing. I don't think that you're a real horror fan if you're not at least a little bit masochistic about enduring terrible movies. You know, like.
I feel like that's just a film fan in general. Like I feel like
That's fair.
I don't know.
Maybe I'll bite my tongue when I'm done though, and just be like, yeah, I should have listened to them because this was.
I mean, I can say one that's particularly bad was Alucarda, which is just Dracula as an anagram. It was. I don't know why it was so bad, but it was. There's lots of hits and misses, but it's interesting because when you take the whole like trope and you look at all these examples of it, you do see a lot of patterns emerging, and that's what I'm really interested in. Is not necessarily how each film handles its protagonist or villain, but rather like why is this such a common idea? And how does it affect the audience? There's the idea that for a straight audience seeing this, and this would be true of the sort of straight people creating these films for the most part, it's about sort of men's fear of female desire. But for the queer spectator who might be seeing this, they might be getting really empowered by this erotic figure that is able to kill and outwit members of the patriarchy, whether they're, religious people or, someone's father, and you're sneaking into their daughter's room. Something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to say that like as a cis straight white male, that's one of the things that I'm really trying to actively explore right now is just seeing movies that don't just represent a wide variety of people, but that are made by a wide variety of people, because it's all film and art. The world is very oversaturated with people like me's perspective. And I have been particularly excited with the new horrors that are brought from perspectives that are drastically different than mine, that have had to endure different things. So
I think we haven't talked about it a lot, but I do think that's really important. We talked about it with Patrick Patterson, the representation of people in color in film, but I think that LGBTQ representation in film is so extremely important as well. Not that it's necessarily hand in hand with that, but I just watched a film that I've owned for a while that's called The Lure. It's a Polish musical horror story about mermaids. One of the weirdest movies I've ever seen in my entire life, but it feels very in the same vein as vampire films where it's two mermaids, and it's very much the story of The Little Mermaid, like the original dark story, but it portrays them as having these desires and having both desires for with men and women, and it paints them as monsters in certain instances and not monsters in other instances. So I think it's really unique to kind of look at it that way. I also think that your short does a good job. The way that you cut it, you're able to show these patterns from different films. So you're able to see, holding a rosary in one film from the 40s or 50s, and then holding a rosary in the aughts or the teens or whatever it may be. The kind of portrayal and things, at least visually, the way that they're represented in different films. Vampires have kind of stayed the same, it looks like. I mean, they've changed, I'm sure, but like you see representation being similar, like throughout the years, which I thought was cool to see.
Thank God for 30 Days of Night.
That's true.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing, which is to say, it can be easy, especially in horror films, and especially looking at film history, to think that everything is kind of this hegemonic, straight white male perspective. But if you actually look, there's a lot of evidence of queer people in horror genre in particular. I mean, I can point to several members of the like more modern horror genre, like Joel Schumacher, is it Clive Baxter?
Barker.
That was the one who did Nightbreed.
Yeah.
It's a running thing on my podcast that I never get names right, which is so fun for me.
I'm there with you.
Why research?
But
I don't.
and so much of horror comes from the sensibilities of like Vincent Price and some of these, iconic figures who were probably queer. So yeah, like there's once you really look and you kind of like open your mind to the possibility that, especially because a lot of people were closeted, their influence really was profound in the horror genre in particular.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I actually made a TikTok forever ago talking about that and how horror has definitely not always gotten it right. Mm-hmm. But I feel like horror it's a genre that has always been about challenging, views and expectations. So it's definitely been in there. It just hasn't always been credited and stuff the way, I mean, it's definitely, I would say it's the genre that has pushed those boundaries first and like the most, maybe not necessarily first, but like the most. So yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying. But yeah.
Did you, one film that I didn't see, because it's a very non-conventional portrayal, but one film that I didn't see on your list, not that you were including every vampire film ever made, but A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Have you ever heard of that film?
No.
So it's talking about not getting names right, I'm going to fumble this, but it's a vampire film that I'm going to describe slowly as I stall. It's an Iranian vampire film. It's black and white. It is very, it's like a Western kind of, but it's, I think it's on Shudder. It won a bunch of awards, but it's very, very, very good. It's super stylized. But it's a representation of vampires and of women in horror, and of the horror genre by itself, because you don't really see horror westerns a lot, like maybe From Dusk Till Dawn, kind of. But it's just a really unique film that I think you would super enjoy, especially with all the research and viewings of vampire films that you've done in the past. So I just wanted to throw that one out there, because it was one that when you were talking about vampires, especially female, it was like, ding, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, 100%.
No, it's great. It's amazing what I've discovered about like film history. It's just, there's so much of it.
There's too much.
There's so many films out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, it gives me hope as a filmmaker that, as I put out into the world, like, a lot of people have done this before, so it can't be that difficult, right?
Right.
Yep. If someone can make the film Rubber about a tire, you can make anything.
Yes.
You can do anything.
100%.
So speaking about film, obviously there's so many movies, and that's a huge thing to realize. Are you, prior to doing this exploration on vampires or female vampires, are you a horror fan? Do you have a love for horror? Do you have favorite horror films? Where are you kind of at in the genre?
So it's interesting. I don't know that I'd identify as a horror fan. But maybe I should, because I enjoy filmmaking in general, and I think part of my enjoyment of filmmaking is that I don't want to miss out on any part of it because of some preconceived notions. Ooh. I say that, and then I'm also thinking but I don't watch war movies, because those don't really interest me. But horror films interest me more than that. It's that said, I'm such a wimp, and I have been since childhood. I wanted to tell you the story of there was it Disney or WB? There was a film that I had to beg my mom to leave in the middle of because it was too scary.
I have to know.
Yeah, what movie was it?
Do you want to take one guess?
You said okay.
Scary.
You said it was a Disney movie.
I think, or WB, which might be a big clue.
How
WB.
how old are you?
I think I must have been 6 or 7.
The only WB movie that I can think of is Digimon the movie, because I love that movie, but that's not a horror movie.
I can't specifically think of WB films, but I'm trying to go through animations in my head.
Yeah, Sean's a big animation guy, so I feel like you should know this.
Oh, what the fuck?
Oh, so was it
Okay.
The Nightmare Before Christmas?
No.
No?
I
mean,
mean, that's animated, yeah.
Stop motion, yeah. I was thinking it wasn't drawn. I don't know.
Another clue?
Yes, one more.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick was the star.
What was it, Godzilla?
No. Inspector Gadget.
What?
I was so scared of the claw.
Oh.
God, it terrified me. I don't know why. I begged my mom. We had to leave. We had to like walk out of the theater because I was so scared of the claw.
Wild.
I'm over here thinking about like kids horror movies.
Right. Well, I'm also trying to think of like in my head, I'm like the owl from Secret of Nim, or like something crazy, you know, like
Secret of Nim is crazy.
Oh yeah, well the owl is terrifying. There are a lot of people who have been traumatized. Write us at our email and let us know if no. Yeah,
you might be entitled for compensation.
What's the one that's basically a D&D game? The Black Cauldron.
Yeah. So you know what? That's one of the first ones that went to my head, but I knew that was made in like the late 80s. So I couldn't have been
that's
what
true.
you were talking about.
The Bronze Age.
But wow, okay, Inspector Gadget, which I love, by the way. I love the cartoon and the movie. I don't love the second one. We shun it.
I didn't know that was such a big controversy. I guess I brushed into that and then I was just too scared.
Yeah, no, you don't
handle the claw.
Yeah. Yeah, Inspector Gadget fans are more hardcore than Star Wars fans. 100%.
So I empathize with that a lot because I've said this a couple times on the podcast, but I am a very new horror fan. I love film in general, but I've, very recently within the past 5 to 10 years became a horror fan where I like seek out and want to watch every film because much in the same way that I don't like roller coasters and haunted houses, I don't want to pay or do something like myself, go see something that was going to give me a negative emotion. I was like, I know that I'm going to be scared. I know that it's not going to make me feel good, and I don't want that anymore. So I don't know if it has to do with me being, a 20-something where I'm fine with feeling like shit and like I'm seeking that out.
It's just part of being an adult is just shit constantly.
Right.
Yeah.
But also I think one thing that I realized is that the horror genre has, I mean, as I said, with the vampire Western, it has so many facets to it that if you don't like X type of horror movie, there's like Y and Z and ABC, like you'll love a bunch of other kinds. So I think that's like that's one thing that we've talked about a lot is the people that we talk to can at least identify with certain horror films as like, that's the subgenre that I like, or like, that's what I search out. But I definitely understand where you're coming from. Where it was like, I don't want to be scared. Like that just is not my thing at all. Sean, on the other hand.
Well, my favorite thing, so I was a 100% a scared kid. I won't go, because again, we touch on it in other episodes. But yeah, one of my favorite things in the world is finding out where it started for people or what their childhood fears were, or what got them, even if it wasn't horror, if it was horrific moments and other things. And then another of my favorite things is watching people who aren't very into horror, who get scared, who, who think that they can't handle certain things, watching their minds be poisoned. Like, it's my favorite thing in the world. And watching it happen to Steve has been a journey.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's true friendship. That's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want that for you too.
Yeah, we'll give you some. I think specifically, like I said, I'll shout out A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night because it's very unique, and then also The Lure, just because you've watched so many foreign films as well with your.
Yeah.
I guess have they been a lot Have a lot of them been foreign?
Oh yeah,
vampire ones? Yeah.
there's a few like Mexican or Spanish films. There
Okay.
was one Belgian French film, Daughters of Darkness, which was very big.
Ooh.
There was the German
There's
one that was just in German,
the
even though it was
German one.
French.
I guess it was French, but it was only available in German. Yeah, there've been a few
Gotcha.
of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So both of those films, like I said, one is I feel like it's Iranian, but I thought it was filmed in Turkey. I could be wrong, but the other one is Polish, and it's batshit crazy. I can't even explain it. What were you gonna say, Sean?
So I'm curious if you could give me like two, if you have to, movies that aren't a part of this specific, research journey that you've been on recently, that were horror movies that maybe came before or something that you do like, or that had an impact on you and that you hate because they were an uncomfortable experience. Yeah.
It's funny you say two, because I had pulled two in particular.
Perfect.
I think like you were saying about sort of subgenres of horror, I enjoy the things that are unsettling more than gory or like jump scary. Like,
Yep.
I prefer the things that make you uneasy and kind of question identity.
Yes.
And like, I think one of the ones that affected me most as a kid watching it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
And I'm talking the original, like 50s black and white one. Like, even though it's kind of slow to start and it has a mild sort of pace, there's an unease that trickles in as soon as these pods start appearing. And I remember so clearly the scene where they realize that the thing inside the pod has no fingerprints, and it's a humanoid structure without fingerprints. And for some reason that struck me as like such a horrifying idea, because what does that mean about us and our identity? So that Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think, is an incredible one, because it deals with the very classic us versus them dichotomy in films, and it also deals with, what does it mean to be us then, which is a deeper sort of question.
Yeah.
And in that vein, another film that I enjoyed very much was Us.
Yes.
Nice. I thought that's how you were going to segue that.
Exactly.
That was beautiful.
And I watched that a little bit uniquely. I was a little bit buzzed, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'm about to go and watch this film. Do you want to come?" And I just kind of was like, "Sure." And I don't really watch a lot of horror films, especially not in theaters, but I just kind of went with it, and it ended up being an amazing experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember that exterior shot where it suddenly sort of becomes real, where you're looking at Elizabeth Moss's family.
Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah. And suddenly they get, invaded by their doubles, and shit gets really real. And
so real.
Alexa, call the police. Playing the police.
Just amazing. So yeah, those two I think are really exemplary, because they are so uneasy and really make you question.
Yeah, that kind of jumps right into, it. What's that called? The uncanny valley sort of thing, almost. Not exactly, but and just, I don't know. I think it really challenges ideas like xenophobia and stuff. And Jordan Peele is just a godsend.
I was going to save this for the next intro of an episode that we do. But one thing, just because you brought up Us, one thing that I want to throw out is the daughter in that movie, Zora. She's played by Shahadi Wright Joseph, who is also Nala, young Nala in the Lion King remake that they just did. She's going to be in a new Amazon series, and it's about, I think in the 1950s or 60s, like a black family moving to California, and basically their neighbors terrorizing them because they're a black family. But it's on Amazon, and it's called Them, and it's written in script font the same way that Us was, and it's just so goofy to me that this concept was created, and they were like, let's call it Them, and let's have it star one of the people from Us. I just feel like that's so stupid. I had to throw that out there. It just
Oh, you
irked
think
me
it's
today,
stupid?
so.
Oh no,
I think it's goofy that they are starring the same person, and she's been in 2 movies, one us and the other one them.
I think it's they have to know that has to be on purpose, and it's a direct reference.
I don't think it's done by Jordan Peele or anything like that.
I'm not saying it's done by
You're
them,
just saying
but
it's
like
an
an
homage.
homaging to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I could watch it and hate it and agree with you in the end, but in this moment, I'm kind of intrigued and excited by that.
I just thought it was goofy. I had to throw that out there.
Are you? I would also check and see if there's like any affiliation with the creators to Jordan Peele, even if it's not officially on this project, but just in general. I don't know. I'm curious.
I don't think so, but we'll save that discovery for another episode.
Fair.
So all right. One thing that we wanted to do, as we've been doing on almost all of our episodes, is the game, our top 5. Which we're going to start experimenting with different games too, because the top 5 is fun, but I think there's only so much that we can do with it, depending on what the episode is. But luckily for us, we have an episode talking about vampires and sex and sexiness. And so Lauren came up with the great idea of doing our top 5 sexiest monster.
Brilliant.
I'm going to give a shout out to, I've already given her a shout out in another episode, but a shout out to Chelsea Jenkins, who edits these videos and makes them pretty, for coming up with the idea to call it MILFs, which would be monsters I'd like to fornicate with, for lack of a better term.
Very
Exactly. So we're going to do
curse on this show.
No,
go ahead. Fuck.
Totally. I just yeah.
Fuck, it's fine. No.
Goddamn heart attack.
I just feel like monsters I'd like to fornicate. It switches it up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, it's more intimate.
It's more,
you know?
Exactly. So we're going to pick our top 5 sexiest monsters. We'll back up our reasons. I'm sure it's going to get strange.
We're going to reveal a lot about ourselves.
We're going to reveal a lot. I'd like to say sorry to my mom before I do this. No.
Fuck, we have to pause. I have to go get wine from the store before we begin.
Before you get sultry and
exactly.
So what we'll do is we'll start with Lauren, then Sean, you can pick second, I'll pick third, and we'll just go in a circle as we take names off of the board. So number 1 sexiest monster, Lauren, who would you pick?
Wait, do we start at the top? Do we start with the sexiest and work our way down, or do we start with?
So basically, yeah, it's basically like a draft. So you're just gonna choose, out of all the monsters, who's the number 1, like the one that you would want to pick, because as we pick them, they get taken off the board. So like if Sean says something, I can't pick them. Yeah.
Oh,
you're building a team.
Sports thing, isn't this?
It's a draft. Yeah.
It's a draft. Yeah.
Well, my number 1 sexiest monster has to be the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Okay.
Damn you, Lauren.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is correct. Is the thing. He knows what he's talking about.
You're right.
Identified something in this very sexually repressed, lonely gills monster, and extrapolated an entire romance out of it.
Yes. Shape of Water's wonderful. Stealing picks.
I know. All right. But that's a good pick. We knew it was coming.
It all comes from the creature from the Black Lagoon. That original performance. It's very good.
Oh, absolutely.
It honestly is.
I watched that movie 3 times last week because I was working on this Universal art contest thing. Nice. So, yeah, it was great. All right, so me?
Yeah, you're number 2.
Okay, so I think I can do this. Tell me if I can't do it. But I'm going to pick Rocky from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ooh, he is a monster in that.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's the monster. He's like Frankenstein. Yeah. Did I steal one from you, or was that just a curveball?
No, that's just like very, very curveball-y. I'm gonna have the straightest, whitest top 5 in the history of the world.
Don't worry, mine gets weird.
Oh man.
I'm trying to make you shiver with
Yeah. I'm gonna have just the worst draft in comparison. All right, well, I'll switch it up. Since my roommate Chelsea was the one who gave us this great idea, I'm gonna pick from her vicariously, I'm gonna go with Pennywise. She has a thing for Pennywise. I'm gonna go with the Skarsgård version, because I think because Pennywise has Skarsgård in him, like you just know he's sexy, but also he can turn into anything. So I feel like that's got to count for something.
See,
yeah.
I can hear Chelsea in your words because doesn't she have like a big crush on him?
Yeah, Pennywise is on her list, but I also think it's a good choice, so I'm gonna throw it in there.
I'll take it.
That's very good.
I think those are three good ones.
Some people are really into Pennywise. I'm not. I don't really see the appeal, but I think to each their own. And I'm sure a lot of people won't understand my appeal.
Also, just as a thing, Pennywise sucks. Like, it's a very homophobic monster. Like, just not a good monster.
Yeah.
But I guess if we're just going off of appearances, which we don't have to, but I'm just saying if you're going off of appearances, probably still wouldn't pick him. But he's my number one. Yeah. All right, number 2, Lauren, who would you like to pick for your team?
Now, this might be cheating a little bit, but I'm going to say Bride of Frankenstein.
Not cheating.
Nope, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's an interesting one because I find her very sexy ideologically. Because there's something really cool about she's made by men for this specific purpose to be a mate for this monster.
Yeah.
And as soon as she's like born, she rejects him and rejects all of her surroundings. And in a lot of incarnations of the story, will kill herself to get out of this sort of hell that she's trapped in.
Yeah.
I just think that's punk as hell.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to kind of remove an embracing factor of it, but I feel like I can't do this contest without mentioning it. But I'm going to say xenomorphs. Because but not in a good way. Because xenomorphs. I mean, if you look at Geiger's work in general, it is, and overall Alien is a very negative aspects of sex and of men and of non-consensual penetration and phallic imagery and stuff. I would say it's like the perfect sex monster, to be honest with you. So yeah, I just feel like I have to throw that on the list. And now I'm going to rewatch Alien after this, by the way. But yeah, does that make sense? Is that fair?
One of my friends did say to me, "What does Alien's mouth do?" So yeah, that's very fair.
Yep.
It took a second to sink in my brain as I thought about the images from Aliens 3 or Alien 3. Oh God. All right. Well, let's build up my straight white list. I'm gonna go with The Witch from The Witch, because I feel like there has to be an iteration of that in every pick that I do, or every draft that I do. She's honestly just super hot at the beginning when she steals the kid, and my boy is walking up to her, and she's like, "Would you like an apple?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am."
How very vanilla of you, Steve.
But she also turns into a naked old woman, grinding up some stuff.
Then it gets kinky. Yeah.
Then it gets,
I can respect that more.
That's the pepper. That's the spice.
That's the spice. Yep. Well, so The Witch from The Witch is going to be mine. Yeah. She's a monster.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Pick number 3.
So mine is going to need explaining. Shauna Sassy of Nightbreed.
Oh, okay.
The porcupine girl.
Okay. Yeah, I need to re-up. I'm actually going to pull it up while you talk.
If you look her up, you might remember her. She has 2 very iconic scenes. One at the very beginning of the film and one near the climax of the film. And I don't know what it is about her. She just has a cool kind of aura with the pins all down her back and the weird thing on her face.
Yeah.
She's terrifying.
Oh yeah. I was about to say, I had a vague blurry image in my head, but like I said, it's been so long. Absolutely. I agree with you.
there's just something, and I could have chosen the other, arguably more plot relevant character who just turns into smoke and just like shows her titties in one scene.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, there's something really hot about those quills.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
It's the danger. It's
It's
the danger.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch this now.
So is it me?
It's your turn.
Okay, so I'm going to. This is where I would say one of my more standard, straightforward picks. And you mentioned her earlier, but Jennifer from Jennifer's Body. You obviously have to. Yeah, you have to, because I feel like, especially in modern, the epitome of sexy monster. And obviously that movie's just fantastic in every way. Yeah, right. But even then, even as she sort of unwinds, there is a sexiness to that as well. But yeah, I don't know.
No,
Had to.
I love Megan Fox. She got such a raw deal from Hollywood. So,
She really did.
Yeah.
Every time I rewatch New Girl, every 2 weeks when I restart it, I'm like, her arc is just so good.
So
I
good.
just wish she was in more things.
So good.
But now she's with MGK, and that's, who cares?
Interesting. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So my pick is going to be something that I thought Sean would have taken a while ago, but I'm going to go with Lori from Trick or Treat. My werewolf girl, my main werewolf
the
girl.
one that's dressed as Little Red Riding Hood.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
I had to look up her name because I couldn't remember it, but I knew that she was going to be a good one, and I was like, if she doesn't get chosen in the top 3, I'm going to take her. So sorry,
could
Sean.
choke myself unconscious out of frustration right now when I tell you that why didn't I even think about that? You could have just said overall the werewolf pack.
Yeah,
I'm so pissed. Yeah. Good job. Good on you. God damn it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, she's a good one. It's a movie I've come around to really enjoy, so it's got to be on there.
It's just fun to watch a group of very attractive women just to, like, completely rip a bunch of dumb men to pieces. Like it's just fun. It's just fun.
Girl power.
Yeah.
Yep. That could be a mild sex scene that a love scene that you talk about, because that one starts off very love sceney.
Yeah.
And ends not love sceney at all.
I am spoiling things. We are planning on having a whole, we do bi-weekly episodes. So we're thinking for doing October, doing 2 horror themed things.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
if you want us to come hang out. No.
No, that might be fun.
Listen, we didn't mention this at all, but I gotta say, the stop rating is just genius. I know that Sean doesn't know what we're talking about.
I'll know very soon. Yeah.
So really quick for the listeners that have made it this far in the episode, can you explain the stop rating? Because it's wonderful. I meant to touch on it earlier and I didn't do it.
Well, it is our patent pending rating system for the sexiness of an on-screen love scene. It's stop. As in stop, it's so sexy. We've got soundtrack, which is a huge deal. Time, as in the ratio of time, how it uses its time effectively. Authenticity, authentic to real life, This is where I always have to count it in my head. Heat, for just how erotic, how sexually charged is it? And then production value for basically everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first time I heard you say that and describe it, I was like, that is just it's just genius. Because I also love that you're taught you go the jump from H to P when you're like, God, it's so sexy, and Rose's hand is on the window and coming down, but also the production value of how nice that car looks. Yeah, and I'm just like, that's wonderful.
Real quick, because I know that we're mid game. And we're kind of veering a little bit, but I wanted to ask earlier, and we just didn't get there. Do you guys specifically explore the scene itself, or do you go into any behind the scenes on the making of it, because there's a lot of crazy stories about sex scenes in movies, and I'm curious if you guys are touching on that as well.
Oh yeah, when we can, we love to bring sort of behind the scenes stuff into the forefront.
Perfect.
When I'm talking about a scene, I love to get just general information about, like, for one thing, the composer, because that's important to soundtrack. But things like DP, things like, you know, any sort of there's the position intimacy coordinators, you know, all of these things that are going into the production of it. And there are some fun things that I've found out. We did a special on 50 Shades of Grey that was very, very fun. Such a bad movie.
Yeah.
But I found out that throughout the sex scenes, while Jamie Dornan was just doing push-ups to kind of like stay in the zone, Dakota Johnson was just like downing whiskey shots. And I was like, nah, I respect you, Dakota Johnson. I respect you a lot more knowing that now.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so excited to dive in. I really am. I truly am.
I'll put that segment back in the beginning of the episode. So
you could just leave it. I mean, either way.
It doesn't matter. It's all one thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about the top 3. So now it would be your 4th pick, Lauren.
Okay. So, Pan's Labyrinth.
Ooh.
I'm going to say the one that you think of as the monster is not sexy. The pale man?
Yeah.
Can't get into that.
Yeah.
But the fawn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something there.
Yeah. There's...
It has to do with the fact that it's a film about kind of a coming of age story, a loss of innocence, and there's something about the fawn that is kind of picking up on a sexual energy. It's like fitting into that theme.
Yeah.
And I remember I had very confused feelings watching that for the first time.
Interesting.
Especially when he got mad in that one scene.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
Stop.
Oh god. So yeah, that Pan from Pan's Labyrinth. That is my number 4.
So can we just agree that Doug Jones is hot then? If that's where we're going. All right.
Listen,
I was about to say
we reached out to him and his agent said, hit me back up in June. So you better believe we're going to have Doug Jones's sexy.
I will shit my heart out of my face if that happens. Like, let's go. Great pick.
had to throw that one in there. Yeah, that's a top notch pick.
That'd be crazy.
All right, Sean. Number 4.
Okay, number 4. Let me think. I'm looking at some of my people here. I'm trying to figure out what to embrace here. I think I'm gonna go with I might mess up the name. I really hope that I don't. But is it Selma Hayek?
Selma Hayek, yeah.
In Dusk Till Dawn.
Pantanico Pandemonium.
Yeah, because I mean, how can you not watch that scene and feel things? You know.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely, 100%. I was really. I'm going to tell you what my other one was that I'm torn between, just because I don't think either of you are going to pick it. But I almost picked for that the demon in Rosemary's Baby, and that interaction again. Another horrible whatever.
The demon.
But
okay.
Yeah, during with the feathers and the claws. Scene. Yeah, just because there's a lot of scratching.
Well, that wasn't your 5th pick. You can still put the demon.
Trust me, I have a better 5th pick.
Okay.
Yeah,
we always do honorable mentions. It's fine.
Yeah, I usually wait till the end, but I was pretty confident that neither of you would pick it.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the Selma Hayek one because watching that scene, she's so hot, very, very attractive. But
absolutely.
Then you also get just one of the most explicit instances of Quentin Tarantino's foot fetish.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
It takes me out of the moment because I'm like, oh, he paid her to do that for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Film.
Oh, yep.
He's like Dan Schneider on the Nickelodeon team.
Oh my
We don't have to talk about that. I just wanted to throw that
My
in there.
childhood is ruined.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's not to tangent, but that was one of the things that took me out. I liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that was one of the things that took me out of that film so many times because man, it's like rampant in that one.
Yeah.
Like, Hateful Eight didn't do it so much, but that one was like, oh,
Yeah.
right, Quentin, tone it down.
At least
Yeah.
his aren't with children,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
doesn't.
Could be
Yeah.
worse. It could be much worse. He could be a cannibal.
Yeah.
That's Army Hammer. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yep.
There's so many worse fetishes out there.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Oh God.
Each their own. Sometimes, not really.
Sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So I talked about this film earlier. This is a total like dark horse. But I'm gonna go with the two mermaids from the movie The Lure that I just watched. But they're called Golden and Silver. They end up being essentially strippers at a cabaret. Mermaid strippers. But they're called Golden and Silver, and they're both terrifying and also attractive at the same time. So
Absolutely.
they're my one pick.
You've made me so curious about that movie this episode.
I think you should. I think the only way to watch it, if it's on the channel, is the Criterion channel, because I have the like physical Criterion of it, which is just like out of all the. I know that Criterion has weird movies, but like this film, it makes literally no sense. But yeah, The Lure. I can't recommend it enough if you want to just watch something that's just stupid weird.
I do. I do.
All right. So Golden and Silver is my number 4 pick, and we're gonna round out your team right now, Lauren, with whoever you're picking.
This is a monster. It's not necessarily from, I think, a horror film,
That's fine.
but the Lord of Darkness from Legend.
Dude, that's so fucking. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Curry?
Tim fucking Curry.
I mean, he's covered in prosthetics, but
Yep.
his voice and his aura,
Yes.
just his presence is so sexual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I am shocked that you picked that,
Yeah.
and am absolutely so thrilled because it goes perfectly into my pick.
What's your pick gonna be?
The Smog from Ferengully, and I just won, and I just won, and I just won, and I just won. Because why? Because Tim
yeah.
fucking Curry. Also,
that makes
when you
me
watch,
wish I would have chose Tim Curry's Pennywise now. We would all
Yeah,
have
I know,
a Tim
that's
Curry
why
on
I
the list.
asked when you said Pennywise, because I was like, is this going to be a Tim Curry?
it's everything from the animation in that to just Tim Curry. You can't. It drips sex.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
so
a good one.
Physically, he comes across better in my pick than as an amorphous blob of ooze.
I would agree. I just think that I'm going to get the votes because it's from Ferengully. But you're absolutely right. Maybe my confidence, though, maybe because I said it, people are going to be like, fuck Sean.
Yeah, we don't even like Ferngully.
Lies.
All right, so this is the time where I have the last pick, so I'm going to throw out some of my honorable mentions that I had because I think I had some cool ones, right? So I was going to maybe choose Mothra. Really pretty, right? Mothra's really pretty.
Yeah.
Kind of close to, not really close to Legend, but Hellboy. I feel like Hellboy kind of falls under that umbrella. Ron Perlman. I hate Ron Perlman in most movies. Maybe Hellboy would be good. Not going to pick him though. The other one that I thought I might pick, The Meg. You know what I mean? Like
What?
The Meg.
Explain yourself.
Explain it. No, dude.
No, I understand, because I also was like, can I just say King Kong? And I was like, no, that's just a gorilla.
Hey, no, I would have accepted that.
No, 100%. King Kong was on the list. I didn't want to mention him, but I was like, you could do it 100%. So I'm also gonna pick a monster that's not from a horror film, but I feel like I can't end this without it. Celia from Monsters Inc. Mike Wazowski's girlfriend.
You bitch.
With the little snakes.
With the snakes, yeah.
Is it the snakes that do what does it for you?
The Medusa. I don't know. I feel like she's just really like, she's all about her man, and then she doesn't take any shit. Also,
Yeah.
I just feel like she's really got it going for her, and she's
Yeah.
really on the ball with everything. And
Yeah, I've definitely.
she's dating Mike Wazowski, so I feel like that says a lot about a person.
Put that thing back where it came from. So help me.
Exactly. Well, I think we have some good teams. I think that this is that was a ride for some of these bits. I gotta admit that explaining these or putting these out on a graphic will be fun. So that was super fun. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we can.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course,
Absolutely.
if you are listening to this right now, go listen to the Let's Get It On Film podcast. As of right now, there's 6 episodes out. I think by the time that this current episode we're recording comes out, there'll probably be 1 or 2 more. Super fun for fans of film and sex and everything in between. So, Lauren, thank you again, and thank you all for listening.